Hey guys, I'm Rhinne. I peaked rank 11 on the pokemonunite leaderboards. I've been top in other games, and I'm here today to tell you guys my personal views on the current pokemonunite meta. Hopefully this tier list will help you guys determine characters you want to play, or just cement your feelings on where characters currently lie in the meta as far as we're aware. Keep in mind this is a relatively early guide, the game has been out for less than a week, so feelings will change later on, maybe metas develop, who knows. So let's start off with God tier. So I only have one Pokemon in God tier at the moment. His name is Cinderace. This character is absolutely insane. Cinderace has insane damage. Cinderace has insane survivability. Cinderace just has everything you want from a DPSer. It is so difficult to kill this guy. He can burn objectives. He burns people. He is so difficult to get on top of if he has red buff. If you're playing Cinderace, ideally you play him in the jungle because he scales super well from levels, and his ganks, once he gets red buff, is really strong. It's really weird because he actually beats the assassins 1v1 at level 5 because it's very hard for them to stay on top of him with the red buff, and each side DPSs them. As long as you play it correctly and you dodge their abilities with your flashes and whatnot. So Cinderace, God tier, you need this in pretty much every single team composition at the top of the ladder. There's a reason why 1/4 of the top 100 is dominated by Cinderace mains right now. This character is batshit, please nerf it. Alright, next up we have Eldegoss. So Eldegoss is pretty necessary in team comps as well. She's pretty much the only real support in the game at the moment. Eldegoss has insane shields, insane heals, and insane utility if you end up going Leaf Tornado as well instead of the shields. Her ult is one of the best in the game, if not the best in the game. It's AoE damage knockback, and it heals your team for a lot, and it makes her invuln, and it gives her a move speed buff. Her ult is just batshit insane. She might only be S tier right now because she is the only support in the game. Maybe when they add other actual supports into the game, she won't be S tier anymore. But for now, S tier, probably second best character in the game. Next up is Snorlax. So Snorlax is pretty much everything you want from a tank. He has stupid damage. He has insane early game. He is impossible to remove from lane. This character is just batshit. He has some of the best clear speed in the game. If you have a Snorlax in your lane, you're pretty much guaranteed to get any minion, which will lead to a level advantage for you. Snorlax is insane. Very good character. He has good utility with block. He has good utility with heavy slam. You can insect people with block. Good zone control. His ult makes him basically unkillable. This character is fucking insane. You have so much utility, so much damage. Next up, we have Lucario. So I actually think Lucario is better as a laner than he is as a jungler. If you put Lucario in the jungle, I think he's A tier because characters like Cinderace exist or Zeraora. But I think in lane, Lucario is S tier. His lane is very strong for setting up ganks with quick attack plus meteor mash. Starting at level 3, you can actually set up that. And once you hit level 5, if you spec into extreme speed, you can fight inside of the bees extremely well. It is very hard to take him down because of the healing and insane mobility he has. This character is just insane. He also gets a shield when he's low and a move speed buff. He's so difficult to take down. He's very, very, very agile. He does a lot of damage. He does a lot of AoE damage in team fights with extreme speed as well, dashing around like a madman. This character is very, very strong. Play him as a laner, not a jungler. Next up, we have Ninetales. So Ninetales is probably the best CC bot in the game at the moment. Ninetales does a lot of damage. She has an extremely strong early game. She has a very good late game. She has a lot of utility with Aurora Veil and all of her CCs. She has, along with Snorlax, some of the best last hitting capabilities in the game, so you'll generate level leads that way. Ninetales is very, very strong at the moment. Super insane character. So this one's going to be a bit of a hot take, but I think Gengar is only A, maybe even B tier. So let me explain that one because that one sounds really weird. Because you're like, oh my god, dude, you're playing Gengar. You can just hex spam, hex, 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 and I've been deleted so many times by that. That's insane. So I think Gengar is a character that will become worse the more the game progresses. Why is this? Because we can play around him via counter jungling. He is very susceptible pre-level 9. Extremely weak character before he becomes actual Gengar. On top of this, he is very vulnerable to CC and teamfights, so the later the game goes, the worse he becomes when characters like Sobro or Snorlax or Ninetales exist. If you're playing a character like Cinderace, you can just feint his Sludge Bomb and then it becomes worthless. In fact, if you just dodge his Sludge Bomb, now all of a sudden Hex doesn't do anything unless one of his teammates CCs you somehow. So I think Gengar is just, I mean, he's good, don't get me wrong. He's the best pub stomper in the game. It's just, I think the later the game goes on, as more people learn how to play against him, he's going to become worse. Or maybe he ends up becoming better because people run team comps around him that have CCs in them, so he's not relying on landing Sludge Bomb. But the thing is, even if you land Sludge Bomb, you're still just going to get CC'd and you're still going to die the same exact way. Alright, so next up is Sobro. So I think Sobro is the second best tank in the game. He has really good CC later in the game. Surf plus telekinesis, Surf knocking up 3 times, telekinesis being a Malzahar ult, and then his actual ult is a second Malzahar ult. So he has 2 Malzahar ults. But his early game is pretty mediocre, especially compared to Snorlax. And Snorlax has pretty much just as much CC as him, but Snorlax is also unkillable on top of that. Slowbro is actually relatively squishy for a tank. He's not like super duper squishy, but I can kill Slowbros pretty easily. If I'm playing Greninja and I want to run down a Sobro, I can run down a Sobro. If I want to run down a Snorlax, that's just not going to happen. I will never be able to do that. Snorlax is so tanky. But Slowbro is actually pretty squishy. His Grey Health honestly doesn't really seem to do that much. It's not like true Grey Health, it's like based off the damage he does. I think Slowbro is really strong, especially if he can hit level 11 for the triple knockup from Serve. But outside of that, he's just inferior Snorlax. But inferior Snorlax is still really good. A worse version of a super strong character is still strong. Next up, I have Pikachu. Honestly, Pikachu might be B plus tier. It's hard for me to say, but Pikachu is once again just worse Ninetales. So just like Slowbro is worse Snorlax, Pikachu is worse Ninetales. They both have really good early game. The difference is Ninetales has better team utility and scales better than Pikachu. After the early game, Pikachu is super ult reliant, whereas Ninetales still has a lot of CC outside of that. That's not to say Pikachu is bad. Pikachu is still a really good character. She's just not Ninetales, I guess, for lack of a better term. Next up, we have Zeraora. So I think part of the thing that holds Zeraora back from being strong is just Cinderace jungle is just so much better, and you don't want to play this guy in lane. So I'd rate him as an A tier. I think he's very strong. He has an AoE cannon ult that does pretty much one-shot you damage. He's very good at sticking on people. Zeraora is pretty strong. It's just Cinderace is the best jungler in the game by far. I think it's pretty hard to justify any other character taking jungle over Cinderace right now. Next up, we have Machamp. So Machamp can actually lane pretty well, and he can jungle. So I think he might actually be top of A tier, borderline S tier. Put him up here. Machamp is extremely difficult to kill in lane because he is an unstoppable and a move speed buff. He has very good gank setup. Once he hits level 5, he'll do stupid amounts of damage. He has mediocre last hitting early game until he hits level 5. And then once he hits level 7, he has super good last hitting with cross chop. But you can survive his laning phase with bulk up, making you unstoppable, so you can't really be CC'd and put down. You can just retreat and eat your berries and try to scale up. Once you do scale up, Machamp has an insane late game. You can actually run down people. You can go 1v3 in fights. You can steal Zapdos. You can do everything on this character. He has super good engage that you can't dodge. He has really good damage. He's really hard to take down. He has good mobility. Machamp does it all. He just needs to scale. This also works in the jungle as well. If you full clear your jungle, you'll hit level 5 when you gank, and then you gank at level 5. You have submission. Nobody can run from that. As long as you have follow-up CC, it's pretty much a guaranteed death. It's just, why do that when I can do the same thing on Cinderace? Alright, next up we have our B plus tier. So I'm actually a Greninja main. I was debating, I had him in B earlier, but I was thinking about moving him to A, so I made him his own tier at B plus, because I don't know if he's quite as good as the characters in A, but the more I play him, the more I feel he's not quite B. So I think Surf Greninja is probably the way to go. Surf plus Smokescreen. I've been trying Water Shuriken, and Water Shuriken, well, at first I thought was good. I think on Greninja, you're forced to go into melee range of characters. The problem with Greninja is that even if you're in melee range, you still do less damage than a character like Cinderace, which is kind of insane, by the way. I don't know why a character that's putting himself in harm's way like that, like a literal paper thin, worst HP pool in the game character, being in melee range is doing less damage than a ranged character, but oh well. He has really good snowball potential. If you get ahead on Greninja, you can just run down entire teams. Because of Smokescreen putting you stealth and then you just go gank their backline with Surf and one-shot them, it is fucking insane. And this character, it scales super well. Once you hit level 14, you start getting really high base attack speed and you can just start chunking everybody. Next up, we're going to put Absol in B tier. So I think Absol jungle is just like a mediocre version of Zeraora jungle. It's like Zeraora with his stick ability, but with none of the AoE damage and a worse ult. Zeraora's ult is point and click. Absol's ult is I walk away from this thing and laugh because it has a 30,000 year cast time and it doesn't even do that much damage. I kind of feel bad for Absol mains, I'll be honest. Next up is Clamorant. So Clamorant just feels like bad Pikachu. A bad Pikachu is pretty good. Maybe he should be B+. In fact, we'll put him in B+. So Clamorant ults can be out DPS'd by Cinderace and Greninja if Greninja is sitting in melee form, and he's like level 14 or so for the attack speed bonuses, which makes his ults kind of bad. His ult is good early game, and his damage is really good early game, and so is his CC, but that's it. He just has a good early game. His late game is pretty mediocre at best. I feel like I can run him down, and I ask myself every time I see this character, why are you not just playing Ninetales? Next up is Crustle. So Crustle has a lot of utility in the form of his wall, but I don't know if that is wall is good enough. Compare his wall to something like Block from Snorlax. Block from Snorlax can insect people, it can be moving, so it can transform a terrain, can CC people multiple times. Crustle Wall doesn't do any of that. It's just inferior, and then he does mediocre damage on top of that, and he's not really too tanky like Snorlax is. I think this character is okay, but there's just better options. Once again, why not play Snorlax? Why not play Sobro? Next up is our C tiers, so Wigglytuff. Wigglytuff is forced to be in melee range of other characters, despite having a really low HP pool. She is very easy to kill, and if you're singing on top of people, that takes a long time to go off. It takes like a second and a half or something of singing on top of someone before they fall asleep. And if you look at Sing and then you look at an ability like Yawn on Snorlax, it's just not fair. Why does Snorlax have an ability that doesn't even spec into that often that is better than Wigglytuff's best ability? Yawn goes off instantly, TCs for just as long. It's much easier to use. You can use it from range. You're not forced to be in melee range. And on top of that, Snorlax is stupid tanky. Wigglytuff needs some love. She is so difficult to play. Her second ability as a support, by the way, is a mediocre damage ability. She has like basically one ability, and that's just horrible. Her one ability isn't even good. It's an inferior version of other characters. Next up is Venusaur. So I've been playing quite a bit of Venusaur actually. Once Venusaur gets going, he's actually decent. He's not like horrid, which almost makes me want to put him in B tier, but I don't think he's anywhere near as good as these characters. So Venusaur has the worst ults in the game, probably, besides Wigglytuff maybe. His basic abilities kind of suck, and his scaling takes so long to get off. His landing is bad, his mid game is bad. He only starts ramping up once he hits like level 12 or so, I believe. And I think the Petal Torrent version of him is the way to go over Solar Beam, just because I feel like it can actually do damage that way, whereas Solar Beam, I use Solar Beam once and then I'm useless for like another 10 seconds. I ask myself, why don't I just play Gardevoir at that point? And both take a long time to scale and both have a lot of range, but Gardevoir does way more damage and has way more utility. So I think Venusaur is just pretty bad, which is kind of sad because he has a somewhat interesting kit. Next up is Talonflame. So Talonflame is one good thing about her, and that is his ult. His ult is pretty strong. You can just like throw people into like the other side of the map. That's pretty cool, I guess. He also has good ability to score on goals because of his high mobility. But that's it. Outside of that, you're just hard outclassed. You're taking up the jungle role. If you go into lane, it's very hard for you to scale. You don't have good ganks that early on. I think Talonflame just sucks. Next up is Garchomp. So I think Garchomp is decent. The biggest issue with Garchomp is until he hits level 9, he's pretty much worthless. So I ask myself, why would I play Garchomp when I could play Machamp? When both have really good scaling, both have really good ults that dominate team fights, but Machamp is so much more useful starting at level 5. He has better ganks, and he is better without his ult than Garchomp is. Garchomp is heavily reliant on being in your face. He needs 5 attacks in order to get his attack speed scaling online so he can actually start doing damage. That's really hard to do when there's a Cinderace kicking your face in when you're trying to do that. Garchomp needs to hard scale. That is very difficult to do given how horrible his early game is. Garchomp actually has the worst early game in the game. It is so difficult to play him in laning phase. I think this character is, I don't know. He's a cool design where he's like a bruiser go in, CC disruptor kind of thing, but he just feels so bad to play. Gardevoir just came out, so we don't know. Mr. Mime, every single Mr. Mime I've seen has been really strong, but I don't know if that's just because we don't know how to play against it. I don't see very many Mr. Mimes on the ladder, so it kind of tells me that he probably sucks because I feel like people would pick him up if he were good. So we're gonna put him in I don't know for now. And then Charizard, I feel like Charizard has the potential to be B plus tier, but I don't see very many Charizards. Every time I do see a Charizard, he seems really scary, just like Mr. Mime, but maybe his early game is just holding him back too much from being viable. Anyway, that's my Pokemon Unite tier list. I hope this was helpful for you guys. Maybe this will help you guys with your main indecisions, if you guys have any. If you guys have ideas for more videos for me to make in the future, let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next time.